أعوذ بالله
So,
السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والتابعين بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. We start in the name of Allah, the most gracious, most merciful. We bear witness there is no deity worthy worship except Allah. Praise and glory be to Him. And may peace and blessing of Allah be upon His Prophet, who was sent as a mercy to all mankind. May peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, his family, his companions, and those who followed his path until the day. I greet you with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you all, dear brothers. This is Dr. Abdul Aziz, your host, and we have our guest today, Brother Asad Zaman. And of course, I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect you all from this variant of COVID-19. And those who are ill, may God give them a cure as soon as possible. Who passed away, those who have passed away, may God's mercy and forgiveness shower their souls, and may God give their parents, their families and friends patience and great reward. It's nice to have you, Brother Asad, again. How are you?
how are you? Okay? Inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. I think we have a lot of things to discuss as usual. And of course, one thing is about Hajj. And Hajj is coming soon. We are today on the 24th of Dhul Hijjah, the 11th month of Islamic calendar. Therefore, 6 days from now, hopefully we start with the month of Dhul Hijjah, which is the last month of Islamic calendar. And from the 8th, 9th, and 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, that's where the Hajj season starts, the fifth pillar of Islam, the most important. But as we said it before, as brother, you can remind us, there's just 60,000 people are authorized to do their Hajj, but they have to be Saudis and resident. Nobody's coming from overseas. And there was a lot of reaction to that. A lot of Muslims say, if somebody is vaccinated, everything, why is not allowed to do pilgrimage? But we'll discuss it within you have been on Friday prayer. Of course, we start with the community news. And what was your topic?
It was, of course, it had to be Hajj. As you said just now, we're approaching Dhul Hijjah. The first 10 days we know are extremely important. They are actually many ulama regard them as more important spiritually than the last 10 days of Ramadan. We know how important the last 10 days of Ramadan are. The last 10 nights of Ramadan are only more spiritually important because of Laylatul Qadr.
And fasting as well.
Yes, but Laylatul Qadr is what gives the last 10 days, 24 hours of each of the days of the last 10 days of Ramadan, superiority over the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Many ulama feel that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, wal fajr, wa layalin ashr, that these 10 days which are mentioned in this ayah.
Can you just translate that, the verse, what you have just got is the Dome chapter, Surah Al-Fajr. Can you translate the verses which you have just mentioned?
Well, by the dawn, and of course, it mentions by the blessed sort of 10 days.
Yes.
Ashr, meaning 10. So this emphasizes the importance of those first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Very, very important indeed. And of course, as I was saying in my khutbah, what does Hajj actually mean? It literally, linguistically, Hajj means to prepare yourself for or to go to a person or a place of reverence, honor, dignity, a holy place. So that is what Hajj actually means. And that's why the word pilgrimage is a pretty good translation of that, because it kind of sort of encapsulates the same sort of spirit of traveling for the sake of Allah. So, as I was saying to them, that look, we could talk for a long time on Hajj, but what most people perhaps don't realize is that Although, it is, of course, one of the 5 pillars of Islam, very, very important. Islam is based on 5 pillars, which is your shahada, your salah, fasting, zakat, and Hajj. And although Hajj is the 5th one, it actually incorporates the first 4.
MashaAllah.
It incorporates the spirit and the actions even of the first 4. So the first one is shahada. When we are going on Hajj, we are there to purify ourselves. What do we say? Labbaik Allahumma labbaik. Labbaik la sharika laka labbaik. Innal hamda wa ni'mata laka wal mulk la sharika lak. So essentially we're saying to Allah, oh, we are here only for you, oh Ya Allah. We're not here as tourists. We're not here to see the sights of Makkah or Medina. We are here purely for your sake. And we do not associate any partners with you. So this is emphasizing to us, we're not going for a few days break, or as we would go to perhaps Turkey or France or somewhere. We are here for one purpose and one purpose only. It is because it is a fulfillment of your command, a fulfillment of the fard of one of the pillars of Islam. So we are purifying ourselves, and that, of course, is what the kalima is about. And then, of course, you have salah. Can you imagine Hajj without salah? We intensify our salah within the Hajj so that we get maximum pleasure, maximum benefit. And of course, in the Kaaba, the holiest place in Islam, one prayer is equivalent to 100,000 prayers.
Elsewhere.
Compared to yes, to the normal mosque. So that emphasizes the importance of the prayer during the whole Hajj experience. And of course, we all pray much, much more during this 5 days or so that the Hajj lasts, and of course before and after as well. And then of course you are spending, just as we spend money for the sake of Allah in zakah, we are giving to for the sake of Allah. Also, we are spending thousands of pounds purely for the sake of Allah in pursuance of this and fulfillment of this fard. So it again, that spirit of zakah is in there. And of course, you have to exercise a huge amount of control on the Hajj, because you don't want to ruin it. You've spent so much money, you've put aside maybe 3 weeks or so. You don't want to mess it up. And so you exercise a huge amount of self-discipline and self-control. And that's what fasting is about, is exercising self-discipline and self-control. And of course, within those 5 days, you cannot do the things that you cannot do when you are fasting as well, like being with your wife. So you can see the spirit of the first 4 pillars all incorporated within the Hajj experience. Subhanallah, that's an incredible thing.
And I can feel that you have been there.
Alhamdulillah, let's just say a few times. I don't want to say it, but perhaps a dozen times. Alhamdulillah, Allah has given me that blessing. He's been very, very merciful and kind to me. In the 90s, subhanallah, I just had this urge in the 90s to go almost every year in the 90s. And then I kind of slowed down in the 2000s, and I haven't been now for a few years. And I do feel that urge coming up within me to perform the Hajj when the Hajj is open again. So yes, a certain longing comes within you when you've been there, seen it all, done it. That you feel that longing inside you that you want to go there, even though alhamdulillah I've been many, many times. So when we go, there's something else that happens. What we experience there, and of course, as we are constantly praying, constantly reading Quran, constantly within that environment of worship. We are cleansing ourselves all the time, cleansing and cleansing of all our spiritual impurities, the sins we have committed, etc. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that, and the Prophet has told us that when we perform the Hajj with all the correct requirements and the rituals, then we return back as a newborn baby, totally, completely free of all sins, totally purified.
It is. I just want to interfere because the tradition, a lot of people leave the Hajj towards the end of their lives, towards the end. Is it a good idea?
It is a terrible idea. And the reason for that, I mean, I'll be frank, the first time I did Hajj, I was 26. And it was an incredible experience. You have got enormous energy inside you. And the Hajj experience, it's not easy doing Hajj. On the one hand, you've got about 2 to 3 million people in the same place doing the same things at the same time. Now throw in, and of course it's a restricted, very limited area. Now you throw in 50 degrees centigrade within that mix, and you can see the challenge of the Hajj. It is not easy.
And usually the number reaches 2.5 to 3 million people.
That's right, in the same confined space.
The biggest world gathering, yes.
Yes, and in fact, you say gathering, it's a cross section of the entire world that is gathering, and that demonstrates to the entire world the ability of Islam to crush racism, because every race, every ethnicity, every color on the planet is all represented there, with nothing but love in their hearts for each other. That is a unique experience. I don't think there's any other faith that can boast of such an environment with literally a cross-section of the entire world present. And of course, this is one of the things that totally transformed Malcolm X when he went on the Hajj, because he believed in a very racist kind of form of what what he thought was Islam, which obviously wasn't. The Black Muslim movement, which later on became the Nation of Islam movement, which is now under Louis Farrakhan. And they believe that the white man is a devil because of the racism that they were suffering in America, where Black people had to sit at the back of buses, and the apartheid that existed there, and the discrimination. So this Black Muslim movement believed that the white man, all white people are the devils. And of course, Islam is completely against any form of racism. And when Malcolm X went on the Hajj and he saw black and white and brown all together with nothing but love in their hearts, that smashed all sense of racism that was taught to him by the Nation of Islam.
By the way, he gave his famous lecture in Manchester University.
Yes, he came over here in, I think, the 60s.
Yes.
So, absolutely. When he saw that, white man, the same white people, or not the same, but the white skin people who are discriminating and treating him so badly in America, you had the same white-skinned people, obviously different people, but Muslims treating him like a brother, an equal, and showing him so much love and respect. So it smashed all ideas of racism. So that is one of the things that happens on the Hajj. And of course, the Hajj also is you see the landmarks of Allah. For example, when you think of Paris, you think of the Eiffel Tower. When you think of the Eiffel Tower, you're thinking of France. It's a landmark of France. The Kaaba, when we think of the Kaaba, we think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the house of Allah, built for the worship of Allah.
By Ibrahim alayhi salam.
And his son Ishmael. So we see the landmarks of Allah when we go and perform the Hajj. So there are so many benefits, and one can go on and on about the benefits of this. But of course, how can we join in? We can only talk about it now. As the locals, about 60,000 of them are going to be allowed. 60,000, imagine, out of 3 million. You do wonder when we've just had the England Ukraine match, and then you had the England Germany match. There were the stadiums are pretty much packed, and you're thinking, what happened to the social distancing and the mask wearing? Wasn't that important? They seem to have just dumped all that, and now we are deprived of going on a Hajj. With 60,000 only allowed out of 3 million. That's an interesting thought, isn't it? For the sake of Allah, you have to reduce it, but for the sake of, well, you could almost say shaitan, anything is okay. Anyway, so how do we join in these 10 days? And of course, the 10th day is Eid al-Adha. We spend that time, the maximum. By the way,
Eid al-Adha, inshallah, will be on the 20th of July.
Inshallah. And so when we have, so that'll be the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. So these 10 days, we maximize our worship. We treat them like the days of Ramadan. Give as much sadaqah as we can, read as much Quran as we can, and of course salah and longer rakahs and all the rest of it. We should do the maximum we can, and of course fast in these first 9 days. But of course, days are very long, and if people are going to find it difficult to fast these 9 days, then at the very least, we should all promise to ourselves, and everyone who's listening to this should say, well, I'm going to do my best to fast on those 9 days, but definitely, unless I'm very, very sick indeed, unless I've got some emergency situation, health-wise or whatever, I'm definitely going to fast on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, which is Yom Arafah, which is the holiest day of the entire year for us. And those few days, for few hours, which, and of course, without Yom Arafah, without spending some time, which is typically 4 or 5 hours in Arafat, which is not far from Mecca, unless every pilgrim spends those few hours there, there's no Hajj for them. If for some reason a pilgrim becomes ill and is unable to do the other rituals, going to Mina, going to Muzdalifah, etc., and the Jamarat, if a pilgrim is simply able to spend those 4 or 5 hours from typically around 12 till about 4 or 5 o'clock, if they're able to just spend that time, in worship of Allah in Arafat, then their Hajj is complete. That is the importance of Yom Arafat, the day of Arafat, which is the 9th of Dhul Hijjah. So every single person, without fail, without exception, should promise themselves now that we are not going to miss the fast of the 9th of Dhul Hijjah.
Therefore, Allah gives opportunity those who are able, because Hajj you have to have 2 conditions, physical and financial, to be able to go, and of course circumstances are available to do that.
Maturity as well, yes.
Yes, and maturity as well. And of course, he gives you 1 day of the 9th of Dhul Hijjah when all the pilgrims will stand on the Mount of Arafat. By fasting yourself, you take a lot of reward. But those pilgrims there, they don't have to fast.
Yes, exactly. So that it's sort of in a nutshell, really, is the Hajj.
We'll come back to it.
Yes, we'll come back to it next week, inshallah.
Inshallah. And of course, anyone who are listening to us, you can go to Radio Hajj online, and the theme is there for you, and you can actually there is a lot of things there for you. It's a 7 days program, 24 365 and the 24 hours. And the theme is of the Hajj is there for you, and you can actually listen to the programs through Radio Hajj online.
And
Right.
Next week we will discuss why the Hajj has more to do with the seerah of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Abraham, than with the seerah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yes, yes, yes.
Much more to do with his seerah than even. So this will be a surprise to those who don't actually know this fact.
Okay, because Abraham, peace be upon him, he's the first man to call for Hajj as well. Right. Let's move on the COVID. I think COVID-19, we cannot miss it, because actually it is spreading, and some schools have to close, like we said. And I heard the school which almost 50% of the pupils have to be isolated for 10 days, and even teachers as well. So what is your now situation? And with the coming of this 19th of July, where the government is reviewing the COVID-19 guidelines?
Well, in this country, because they're so successfully vaccinated, I would say the majority of people now, over 40 million, I think, have had their double jabs. And many more than that have had the single jab. So it's becoming less and less important now to be as restrictive as we have been over the past 1.5 years or so, or 15 months or whatever it is. Because as we are seeing, this Delta or Indian variant is again spreading quite rapidly. But as you've seen, the number of people dying has gone down quite drastically. And so it seems that the vaccine appears to be working, because the number of people being infected is going up, but the number of people dying is nowhere near what it used to be before. So that is really, really interesting. So therefore, this whole idea of getting people off school is becoming irrelevant. I mean, I just read a report just a few days ago that they're thinking of getting rid of this bubble nonsense stuff that they've been doing in schools. Because what is the point of, now that the majority of all of the over 65s have probably now been vaccinated, in fact, everyone over, I think 30 has been vaccinated now, and they're going lower and lower and lower. So the whole point of vaccinating children was so that they don't go home and infect their parents or grandparents. But if the parents and grandparents have had their double jabs and are now hopefully immune, so why vaccinate the children? It doesn't make any sense. And yet they want to vaccinate the children. The children are not largely affected, way less than 1%, but 0.01%, have had any, adverse impact.
Because the immune system can cope better than vulnerable people and elderly, isn't it?
That's right. So it doesn't really make any sense. And of course, now we're being told, but within the next few weeks, that masks will be no longer compulsory. You don't need to wear a mask. And I couldn't see the purpose of wearing a mask in the first place, frankly, because a mask does not prevent the virus from getting through into your mouth or nose, because it's too small for the mask to stop it. It's too small. It goes right through the fibers. So it doesn't protect you. The only thing it does is, if you have got the virus,
yes,
and you've got this, and now we're told that even if you don't have the symptoms, you've got the virus but not the symptoms, you can't spread it, because the intensity of the virus is not enough within your body to be able to infect others. That is what Mike Eden, who was the former head of Pfizer, was saying in one video that I listened to, which perhaps you've also seen as well. So, yeah, so only if you are going to cough or sneeze and you've got the virus, then you can protect others from it. Otherwise, there is no point. If you've got the virus, you'll self-isolate. You won't even go out anyway. So
Right.
what is the point of wearing a mask anywhere? And there is no point. It's not going to save you. And if you don't have a virus, you're not going to infect anybody else.
Right. Okay. And the other thing as well, we can link it up with the Health Secretary Mark Hancock resignation and replaced by Jawed as a Health Secretary. What's your comment on that?
Well, you wonder where these people's common sense and brains have gone. Here is Matt Hancock. Every single day we are seeing him in the news and on our television screens. He is being followed everywhere, and yet he is having this affair with another woman. I mean, and of course, as a result, he's breaking the rules that he's telling everyone they should be following. Total utter hypocrisy. So he had to go. I mean, it was stupid of him to have behaved that way.
But we might say just a human weakness,
Human weakness, yeah. وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشًا. As Allah tells us, keep well away from any form of fornication or adultery, because it is such a serious matter.
And I think we have a beautiful chapter of Joseph, Yusuf alayhi salam, and his story.
Exactly. Anyway,
right.
So yes, he's been replaced by I'm not sure how to describe him, but certainly a very experienced person. He's of Pakistani origin, but he still calls himself a Muslim, but he says he's a secular Muslim, and he says that the only religion practiced in his home is Christianity because he's married to a Christian woman. Okay. So you make of that whatever you want, right. Whether you want to classify him as. So yes, he's now, he's now taken over, Sajid Javed, and he seems to have a slightly different attitude than Matt Hancock did, the former health secretary.
Right. Yeah.
Because he seems to be of the opinion, okay, we've suffered enough at home. There's been a huge amount of domestic violence because of all the lockdowns and stuff. No more of this lockdowns. Let people go out. It's healthier for them to go out than to stay in, and forget these masks. They have no use anyway. So why have we been wearing all these masks all this time? And why do I have to, every time I go to these shops and stuff, why do I have to wear it? It just doesn't seem to make any sense anymore. So yes, he seems to have brought some common sense to the table.
But although data, but the government now, they are making some doubts, because depending on the scientific advisors and the data, how the infection is affecting the whole population amongst the young children and elderly as well.
That's right, and that's why I've read a report that they are now thinking of getting rid of these bubbles in schools. It just forget these bubbles now. You can't, just because one child has got the virus, that's it. You send the whole school home or the whole class home. Mm-hmm. It's just wrecking their education.
Okay, let's I think move on quickly. I think to Islamophobia in Scotland.
That was a very, I read that report. Very shocking, really. About 80% said that they had suffered Islamophobia, and over 70% said that it's a daily thing for them. So the levels of Islamophobia in Scotland seem to be much worse than maybe anywhere else, which is surprising when you consider you've got a Pakistani Muslim who is head of the Scottish Labour Party, and then you've got a number of other Muslims who are in very senior positions in the in the various parties. So yeah, that came as a surprise and a shock and rather sad news as well.
All right. Let's go to this famous Thursday, the 2nd of July by-election in Batley and Spain, and the 323 majority votes between the Labour Party and the Conservative.
Well, put it this way: our friend Galloway, who appealed to the Muslim vote, and of course Batley has got, I think, about over 20% Muslim population.
Mm-hmm.
He really messed things up. He almost totally messed up the Labour vote, because I'm sure he took a huge 20%.
He took more than 8,000.
Yes, 6,000 or 8,000. Yes, it was about 20% of the vote went to him. That's a very, very significant amount, very big number. So that was must have been a shock to the whole system, not just to there, that you have to listen to Muslims, because we can decide who is going to win in any particular area, even if we are a minority. We can swing it either way. So it was a big signal to the Conservatives and to Labour, and because Labour appear, there's a lot of unhappiness, discontent with Labour. Labour over the last 30, 40 years has just assumed that the Muslims are going to vote for us, and they have just ignored Muslim demands and Muslim needs. And we know how much Islamophobia now there is within the Labour Party. And of course, we saw what happened to Corbyn. And now, of course, with Keir Starmer, his politics is very different, especially with regards to Palestine. And, well, Islamophobia and Palestine stuff, there is obviously a connection there. So, yes, there is a lot of discontent amongst the Muslims with regards to Labour, and Labour should not, especially with the new generations, they should not assume that all the Muslim vote will go to them. If they do assume that, they will be in for a big shock. So if they want the Muslim vote, they're going to have to listen to Muslims, and I don't think that Labour is listening to Muslims as much as it needs to.
And of course, I think the sister of Joe Cox, who have been assassinated before, killed, took actually Kim, yes, and therefore, and it seems that. Do you think that in the votes, do emotions count?
Of course, especially when it comes to women, and emotions are very important, and also, for many men as well, especially when it comes to issues that affect us from a religious perspective, then emotions are very important, and that's one of the problems that Kim had. On the one hand, she's very much, I think, in line. She's very much on the left of politics. And that's why when she was asked a question after she won, that was Keir Starmer an asset to Labour for them because they won, she didn't answer the question. She did not praise Keir Starmer at all. It was very, very clear that she's not with him because she's on the left of politics and he's, center right almost, I would think. So yes, that's interesting. I think Labour has got a lot to worry about because Labour could end up losing the Muslim vote. I'm not sure where the Muslims are going to go, to the Islamophobic Tory party or maybe Lib Dems, who knows? But certainly, they could be, they'll lose out on that. And if Keir Starmer remains in power, they're going to be losing out on the left of the party. So there's going, you can see a war between the left and the right starting because of Keir Starmer, because he's
And
made
therefore,
sure that.
therefore, are you talking there is a problem of in the Labour leadership?
Well, Kim Ledbetter, who won, she wouldn't even say that yes, it was a good idea to have Keir Starmer as leader, and that his leadership may have helped Labour win in the Batley Spen by-election. So you can see that there is tension there. There is a real problem there. The fact that she even refused to acknowledge Keir Starmer, her own leader. So yeah, definitely there's a problem, and Galloway has really he's really messed up the politics as they stand today, because he has made it clear that an outsider like him, by appealing to the Muslim vote, he can make life very difficult for Labour. Labour, should have won that fairly comfortably, and they didn't win it so comfortably.
And you spoke about the Labour and the only usually between Labour and Conservative there was almost another 14 parties, including independent as well. And of course, they participate in a democracy and they have their representative in this election. But at the end, when in the conclusion, after a long night and the morning, when we were waiting for the results, George Galloway wants to take it to the court.
Well, I don't know if that's a wise thing, unless he's got some proof that there was some wrongdoing. What's he going to do? All he wanted to do was hit, punch Labour on the nose, and he did. And that's all he wanted to do, because he knew he would never win.
Brother Asad Zaman, it's still at the end of the day, when you read about the MP role and responsibility, the MP, he represents the problems and the interest of his voters and constituents, isn't it? The party can come in, but at the end of the day, who decide about an MP is the vote of the constituent. Do you think in this...
That's only true if the constituents are active enough to keep an eye on their MP. But what frequently happens, and I think we discussed this last time, is we elect a dictatorship. We put them in power because they say, we're going to do this for you, that for you, that for you. Okay, fine. And then we forget about them, largely. And then they just follow what their leader tells them to do, and what they feel is in their interest.
And the other thing as well, in the voting, you have citizens and you have residents. And usually somebody who has a permanent resident, for example, and he's staying for years here, but he doesn't want to, or he doesn't want to have another passport, British citizenship, whatever. Usually the resident have a right to the MP about his concern, because the MP position, the MP is very, he's very, very active, and he's very, very busy for time, because especially if he's shadow minister or health secretary or home office minister, whatever, he's very busy in the affairs. But writing to them, it's the easy way for them to follow the issues which are faced by his constituent on this www.writetothem.com. You can actually go and write the postcode of your address, and you can get your MPs, your councillors, and even you can get the lords who speak about the issue you want to talk about. And if you address them by writing, you can actually get their point to them, and then they can take it on. And sometimes they make even, because of that, they make a law, a new law, because of the demand you make through your writing. Why people they are talking about it. The news, they talk about things but not a lot. But why the constituent don't write? Right?
Well, look, we said this earlier on. Look, we elect them and then we just leave them alone, because most people are worried about their jobs. They're, if they can pay their bills, and feed their families, and maybe have a little bit of money left over for maybe a holiday, I mean, that they're happy with that. If those are issues, if they're not happy with those things, that maybe they will contact an MP. But otherwise, people don't have time for politics.
Oh.
We have the system, but how many of us fought for that system? If we had a dictatorship, how would it change your life or my life? Think about it. Yeah. How would it change our lives? We'd still have to work. We still have to, pay our bills and stuff. We just don't decide who runs the country. And how many people care who runs the country, so long as they're living a reasonable standard of life? Yes, only a very small number will care.
Okay, and I think usually analyzing the turnover, how many percentage of those registered or are able to vote or right to vote go. And
can I just interrupt you? I think we're running out of time. Should we move on to?
Yes, all right. I think I want to mention Munster International Festival taking place, and this big band down with 20,000 books of on politics, who may have made actually shaped up the UK as a whole. You can go and visit it from the 1st to the 18th of July. Many activities. Just go to Munster International Festival website. Europe, France, quickly.
Yes, I mean, there's obviously the elections are taking place. Macron has done a huge amount to try and win the far right vote, and it looks like the French people seem to have just lost interest in the politics. In the recent elections, there was a fear, Macron is, obviously his party, you would have expected it to do reasonably well. And people did, I think less than 50% even bothered to vote. So the French people are fed up of their political system. They're fed up of Macron. They're fed up of, the far right. Even they didn't do, Marine Le Pen didn't do too well, even though she's trying to move away from her father's legacy of being openly racist. And it seems that, Macron has lost the plot, and he will say anything and do anything to try and win support. So it really is a case of a state of confusion, really, for the French. I mean, now they're trying to again concentrate on banning the hijab. I mean, of all the things that they could be concerned about, they care about a piece of cloth on a woman's head. I mean, for God's sake, don't you?
Is it just a distraction from the main issue, economics and all this kind, and COVID-19 and all this?
Well, it's all part of Macron saying to the French far right, which is a large movement, I'm also anti-Muslim. Look at the restrictions I'm putting on Muslim women and all the rest of it, and Islam generally. So why are you voting for Marine Le Pen, this is her main thing, that she's anti-Muslim and anti-black or whatever? So if I'm going to be more anti-Muslim than her, then you should be voting for me. And that is really what French politics today, sums up as. It's just quite pathetic.
Right, and let's move on the Charter Muslims in sports.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. That's a bit of good news. That's a bit of good news that we've had. Especially because of what Pogba did, who's now I think one of the top players in the UK, certainly, and probably one of the top players in the world, and certainly the most expensive. I think £400, £400,000 a week he's going to be on, in terms of playing for, is it Man United? So someone as big as him, and remember he's a convert to Islam, although his mother was a Muslim. He was never brought up as a Muslim. He basically converted to Islam. So when he removed that Heineken bottle, even though it's a non-alcoholic Heineken bottle, that it had a huge impact. A small action, but huge dawah impact as well. And as a result of that action, they realized that now we've got almost 300 Muslims in football, and about 70 of them in the Premier League, and so many Muslim athletes now coming along, that we have to, we want to create an environment in which they feel comfortable as Muslims. So alcohol, clearly, Heineken is associated with alcohol, even though that particular bottle was non-alcoholic. Heineken is connected with alcohol, and so to advertise it and to promote it for a Muslim obviously is inappropriate.
And in sports in particular.
Well, of course, because it's the young people who are going to be influenced by it. And I know, many young people who've said, right, okay, if Pogba can do that, then there's something we need to be thinking about.
Right.
It had a huge impact.
Okay. All right, because time is running. Afghanistan, USA living, and Biden.
Yeah, just on that point though, it's not just about alcohol. So they won't have to be, they won't have to obviously be serving it. And in Ramadan they can fast. Halal food will be made available. So it's a whole number of things that this charter is going to deal with, which will really change the way football and it's not just about football, it's athletics generally. That they will be dealing with that, because remember, at the end of the day, 25% of the world is Muslim, and and hopefully very soon, born and bred in this country players will be entering the the Premier League and what have you. At the moment, you don't have many at all. So that's hopefully, should be something that will be happening. So obviously, as more Muslims get into football, into athletics and sport as a whole, the environment should be there to encourage them and not discourage them. Okay.
Right. I think we will discuss USA leaving Afghanistan, moving out.
Very, very important. This is major news, which the West is trying to dampen down and stay quiet about. This is a major loss for the West. 20 years the Americans were there for what reason? To destroy the Taliban. Yes, but 20 years they were there. They put trillions of dollars of American taxpayers of money. They threw every single weapon they had, the most latest of weapons and bombs, with the latest technology, and they got booted out, utterly humiliated in Afghanistan by who? Illiterate people, with many of them with homemade weapons and stuff, and running around in sandals. So this was utter humiliation for the West, because it's mostly Britain, America, and other sort of NATO members, who are of course European and Canadian. So it's a major humiliation that 20 years you are going to, Mr. Superpower, you're going to try and kill and this one movement, and they couldn't do it. And they slaughtered and they killed and they did everything that you can possibly imagine, and no doubt raped and and everything, and still and every kind of war crime, but they still were not able to do it.
And this is
So
not new, because tomorrow is the 5th of July, 2021 is the 59th anniversary of Algeria Independence Day, and we call it Youth Day as well, against the
yes,
French. And the
well,
French have been almost for 132 years, but at the end, settlers, they moved out Algeria and went to France.
and that shows, you see, that weapons enough, no matter how sophisticated your weapons are. See, when Algeria was occupied, and over 1 million, I think if I read a figure that 17% of the population of Algeria was murdered by the French in order to hang on to France. 17%, that's a massive percentage, were killed. But they're still, eventually they got kicked out. They committed massive war crimes in Algeria, but still they couldn't hang on to it. So it doesn't matter about how tough your troops are or what technology they have. The people who are living there, they're fighting for a cause. They're fighting for liberation. But what are you fighting for? To occupy somebody else's land and to steal their resources? That cannot be a good enough reason to fight. And so eventually you're going to lose. You see, the West is used to going into other countries and slaughtering the population and taking over. And like the British did in Australia, almost wiped out the Aborigines, millions of them. They went into New Zealand, wiped out hundreds of thousands of Maoris. So this is our land now, and they took it. And they went into America, and from certainly some figures I've read, about 100 million Red Indians were killed. And they said, okay, it's our land now. So they were used to that. And they thought that, we can do the same thing with Algeria, we can do the same thing with India, we can do the same thing, with Afghanistan and Iraq. And it doesn't work. Okay, you destroy those countries, you send them to the Stone Age, maybe, but you will not be able to occupy their countries forever, because the people are going to fight back. And America should have learned its lesson from Vietnam. Those poor people, with basic weapons and stuff, hardly any weapons, and they, after, was it 7 years or something? I can't remember how many years they were in Vietnam, but over 10 years, I think. And they eventually got booted out. And after killing about roughly, 2-3 million Vietnamese, and chemical weapons and everything they threw at them. So the West, these Westerners, they just don't learn. They keep making the same mistakes. Oh, we're more stronger now. We've got better technology. We can go and take over other people's countries and steal their resources. Well, hopefully, this is a big lesson for America, that no, it doesn't matter about your technology. You can't do it.
And, I just want to do a comparison. Chinese now, with this, the Belt Road Initiative, they are going economically and almost overwhelming the whole world, but through economics and getting goods, selling and buying and all these kind of things.
Well, that's called soft power. You see, the Americans believe in hard power, which is your military and stuff, and the Chinese are doing it through soft power.
Yeah.
Through as you said, through economics. But they're playing a dirty game as well, because they'll go into countries and they'll say, okay, we will help you to build your infrastructure, this, that, the other. See, the Chinese need a huge amount of all the elements, whether it's copper, tin, whatever, oil. And when they see in Africa, whatever, a huge amount of mineral wealth, they'll say, okay, we'll mine it for you. And we'll bring our own workers as well. not local workers, we'll bring our own workers. So there's no employment for the locals. And, but they'll say, oh, but we can't afford to pay you. Oh, don't worry about it. We'll give you a loan to pay us back. Yeah, we'll give you a loan and you can pay us to help you get the copper, etc. out, and then you can sell it to us. And then, of course, when they realize, well, we can't afford to give you because it's just too much and we don't have much income, they'll say, okay, well, in that case, since we're the ones who've been doing all the work here and you can't pay us for all that, we now own the copper mine. We now own the tin mine. Now we own all of these. This is a dirty game they're playing.
Okay.
They did that with Sri Lanka, the classic case. They built the seaport or airport for them. And then Sri Lankan said, well, we can't afford it. We can't afford to give you. And what did they do? It's okay. The airport belongs to us now.
Now, as we said before last week, that the USA moving out of Middle East. Now, Turkey being now in Libya, being in Qatar, and you said being in Afghanistan. Are you thinking that Turkey, because is a member of NATO, wants to go and do this job of reconciliation within the country and bring people to peace and harmony and economic development?
Yeah, I was surprised to learn that Turkey had volunteered and accepted to control the Afghanistan's airport, Kabul airport. But I would suspect that Erdogan will be talking to the Taliban and helping them to develop. I wouldn't be surprised if Turkey starts making deals with the Taliban and with Pakistan. I can see an alliance. I mean, this is me guesswork. This is guesswork here. I can see a very strong alliance happening now between Turkey, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. Turkey and Pakistan are already very close. And now with the Taliban, they'll be controlling Afghanistan very soon. Within 6 months.
Are you thinking if election happen democratically and free, the Taliban can actually take it?
Without a doubt, because look, Taliban are Pashtuns, Pathans, yeah? And 70% of Afghanistan is Pashtun Pathan. So they are the people. They are the people. They're not some foreign movement like ISIS or Al-Qaeda. They are the people. So if 70%, they represent 70% of the population, then a good proportion of that 70% will be voting for them, definitely.
Therefore,
so they will not have
representation. They should be a majority and running the country.
So I don't think that there's any doubt who will be running Afghanistan. It's going to be the Taliban. They are the people of Afghanistan. They're not foreigners. They're not some foreign mercenaries or whatever.
And do you think that Taliban will be listening to Turkey's advice and how to develop economically in of this?
Turkey is very keen. It has a huge projects in Africa, in Somalia, in various other African countries. It has huge projects, and that's why there's a problem with France, because Africa is French territory. And for the Turks to be going into there's a lot of friction between Macron and Erdogan just a few months ago. This is the reason, one of the reasons, because Macron is not happy with Turkey taking more and more influence in Africa. And so, yes, I can see Turkey, Afghanistan, and Pakistan forming a very strong alliance together.
Okay, and of course, we can link with Turkey is having another role to diffuse the situation in Egypt and in Saudi Arabia as well, and regarding Yemen conflict and Egypt conflict as well.
Erdogan is now seeing himself as the Khalifa of he is Amir al-Mu'mineen. In his head, Erdogan is Amir al-Mu'mineen. And so he's trying to build bridges with all the Muslim countries. Why? He knows that the governments of many of these countries don't like him, like the Arab governments, but the people love him. The people in those governments, in those countries, love Erdogan. Whether in Pakistan, whether in Saudi, whether in whatever, the governments don't like him because they know what he's doing. He's trying to be the leader of the Sunni world, and Saudi Arabia doesn't like that. Saudi Arabia likes to see itself as the leader of the Sunni world.
All right.
And so, yes, so Turkey is trying to build these alliances now with Egypt. It's already got a very strong alliance with Qatar, and with Bahrain and UAE and all of these countries, and Saudi as well, of course, saying, look, why do we have to live in a state of war? We should live in a state of peace. And you don't like Iran any more than I do. I don't want Iranian Shia ideology spreading in Turkey and you don't want it spreading in UAE or the Arab world as a whole. They've already taken Syria, they've taken Iraq, Lebanon, and and Yemen. So they have a common agenda. Really, is to stop Shia ideology from spreading in the Sunni world. So they should be natural allies, not adversaries.
All right. And I think you spoke quickly about Iraq. Rumsfeld passed away. And
the monster, yes, the devil himself has finally gone. And, he was such a monster of a man. He was one of the masterminds of the war in Iraq, the slaughter in Iraq, the slaughter in Afghanistan. And now, inshallah, he'll be suffering for the millions of people that died and were murdered by the British, by the Americans in Afghanistan, in Iraq, with their bombs and missiles and bullets and every kind of weapon that you can imagine. And, the war crimes they committed. And Abu Ghraib was attributed to Rumsfeld, that, he gave them the authority to commit these horrendous crimes in Abu Ghraib and many other prisons. So he escaped justice here, but he's not going to escape justice in the Akhirah.
all right.
Inshallah,
Okay.
his punishment has already started.
I mean, that's in the hereafter, and we have that's not our business. Allah is the most merciful, most kind.
Without a doubt, it's between. Maybe he did tawbah before he died. We don't know. But
therefore, we don't have.
He was a killer and a murderer.
Yes, we don't know about that. Therefore, we leave it there. Now, Pakistan and Uyghurs' human rights, and China.
Sadly, because economically Pakistan is now tied in with China in a major way. And many, many Muslim countries are now tied in with China with this Belt and Road project and what have you. They can see China rising. It's going to be the next, it's going to take over America very soon in terms of power and influence and economy. Of course, alongside India as well. So the Muslim countries, in particular Pakistan, they don't want to be on the wrong side of China. So they know what is happening to the Uyghur Muslims. They know this is really zulm of the highest level, but they have little tawakkul ala Allah. This is how I see it. If they had tawakkul ala Allah, maybe they would rely on Allah rather than China, and then they would take care of do something about the atrocities been committed against the Uyghur Muslims. But there we are. Yeah. At least there was a big demonstration outside the Chinese embassy a few days ago.
Right. And of course, there was a protest as well about, Silwan, Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood, demolition and eviction in East Jerusalem.
Well, it's terrible news, of course, for those who are being kicked out of their homes. But the good news is that Israel is, as it does more and more of this, war crimes against Palestinians, they are being exposed. Their brutality is being exposed. their apartheid system is being exposed. And it's just one more nail in the coffin for Israel. Israel is on limited time now. I don't think there is that Israel has much time. Every single debate I've seen, whether it's between those who are pro and anti-Zionist, or whether they are Jews who are pro and anti-Zionism or whatever, or the Zionists have lost the pro-Israel people have always lost the argument. There's no, they just can't win, and they know that the world is going to eventually treat Israel as they treated South Africa, apartheid in South Africa. And this is what we need to emphasize: is we are against the apartheid system, and the world must join forces to remove this apartheid system.
Right, and I was looking at Saudi Arabia plan for the future, and they are now aiming to generate almost $150 billion from Umrah, the lesser pilgrimage, which is outside the Hajj, and the Hajj. And about Hajj, usually the pilgrim a long time ago used to go to Al-Aqsa Mosque, go to the Kaaba, and go to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in Medina, this one. 150 billion. And imagine Muslims, they have to go through the route of Al-Aqsa, Jerusalem. If it was peaceful, is more than 3.8 billion. You are talking about they get to destroy and use it for arms to destroy the life of Palestine. Therefore, Palestinian and Palestine has been always is the cradle of the actual religions, of all the religions, the Abrahamic religions. And of course, if that place is in peace, I think the world will be in peace, and peace will bring development and economic prosperity for all communities. And I believe Jews, call them, I think this is a new nationalism about Israel, Israeli, whatever, and Palestinian, everything. Palestinians have been Jews and Christian and Muslims and non-believers as well, sitting in peace. Imagine this flow of tourism to the countries.
I think with these rapprochement between Israel and these Gulf Arab countries and Egypt, of course, and Jordan, we are going to see far more people, Muslims, visiting Al-Aqsa. And this route of Makkah, Medina, and Al-Aqsa, I think is going to become much more busier. And this will, I think, create more problem for the Israelis. Because if you have, 1 million Muslims coming into Al-Aqsa, to pray there, they're not going to ignore what's happening to the Palestinians. And they will obviously be buying mostly from Palestinian shops rather than Israeli shops to strengthen the Palestinian economy. So on the one hand, yes, this will benefit Israel, this rapprochement. But on the other hand, it should make it more difficult for Israel to destroy Al-Aqsa, especially if they can see that they are getting a huge amount of benefit from Muslim tourism.
Therefore, the opportunity is there for them to consider what you have mentioned as well, to dismantle this apartheid system and treat all resident and citizen of that land equally and with justice.
I think that I think is a natural path. Is it either self-destruction or dismantling of apartheid? And I think if they've got any sense in their heads, they will dismantle the apartheid, especially as world opinion is going against them. I think in the next 3-4 years, never mind 5-10 years, I think in the next 3-4 years, inshallah, we will see in your lifetime and my lifetime the dismantling of apartheid in Israel.
Okay, I think Thank you very much. I think we have tried our best in this time we have been given. A lot of events in the week to around them in that time. I think we're trying to our beating our day. And I hope those people are watching the match of Spain against Italy, and England is waiting for the results patiently. And we hope England will do well and maybe bring the Euro 2020 to England after almost since 1966, no reward. What do you think about this?
Well, this country will explode if they win after so many years, after what, 50, 55 years or whatever it is. Yeah, they will
Since
explode.
1966, yeah.
That's 55 years. That's the year that my family came to this country. It was 1966.
Right.
So that's interesting. Anyway,
thank you very much. I hope for the best for them, as long as I think they don't become like the French. They were beating the Switzerland 3-1 and then they lost at the end, because sometimes you think you are better than them. If you give it a shot, I think, and England for sure is the Premiership is amongst the best in the world, and they have the best teams, and young teams is a very good mixture as well, and the coach is very experienced as well, and I will pray for them to do their best against whoever they win from Spain and Italy. And thank you very much, Brother Asad Zaman, for being with us. And Jazakumullah khair. We start, inshallah, as we start before. We thank you all for listening. You can actually send all your comments to admin@radiohajj.online. Go to radiohajj.online to learn more about Hajj, pilgrimage as well, and other news as well, and this program as well, and tell your friends about it. And until I meet you again, inshallah, we say subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.